So one of the main things that always gets mentioned is that that William the Conqueror's army was held up from crossing the channel by bad weather. Sort of a month or more of bad weather. It seems he spent all of August, or just say the dates. It's famously the 14th of October is the Battle of Hastings. So that's the date we're heading towards here.
Yeah.
And mainly you want to do your fighting in the summer, usually, nearly always. And he apparently spent all of August getting his army together, lots of horses as well. And the logistics of that is interesting. How much hay and fodder you need, how much horse waste will there be?
Yeah.
Like people say tons and tons and tons. How is it possible? Kind of thing. But,
I always wonder this about ancient logistics. They must have worked really, really hard, frankly.
And at first he mustered them at a place called Dives, or at the mouth of the River Dives in France. And then they went across to a bit further along the coast to Saint Valery. So there's a bit more detail for you there. But basically the weather prevented them from just hopping across when they wanted to. And so it wasn't until late September, we think either the 27th or the 28th of September. And so, again, modern historians sort of argue about that and talk about that. Was it purely the case that the weather just prevented them from doing that? Because it seems like quite a long window of time where there was no break in the weather. Seems unlikely, totally possible, but seems a bit unlikely. Or was it possibly, I don't know if I put much story in this, but was it possibly a deliberate ploy by William, hoping that either Harold Godwinson would be defeated up north and there would just be chaos in England, which would be to his advantage, or even that Harold's army, the feared, would disband because it's too late in the summer now.
Yeah.
Because that's a thing that comes up loads. Right, yeah. So if he could wait until they disband in September, late September, then he could bounce across and there's sort of no one opposing him. So was it maybe deliberate? They think it probably was just the weather.
Well,
we don't know.
I mean, it's... I suppose from William's perspective, if the weather has been really rough for the past 2 weeks, really, really rough, and then you've got like a day of clear water, you'd be like, I'm not risking it. I want a good week of clear weather before I take the biggest army I'll ever see across on this dangerous journey. Because, one storm could sink the entire thing and then that's it. You're dead as well. So, I could see prudence being a factor. Even if you've got a few clear days every now and again, you'd be like, no, I'm not taking that risk.
And to state the obvious, it is a massive gamble. The whole thing is just one massive gamble. So you've got to be quite careful.
And it's not like Harold hasn't just crushed the Vikings. It's not like Harold can't win battles.
Yeah.
So it's, the everything is to play for. The stakes are incredibly high, and it's not a guarantee that William's going to win at all. And in fact, it doesn't look at parts like he is going to win. So it's incredibly risky.
Yeah, Harold Godwinson had just killed Hardrada, arguably the most famous, greatest warrior in the world, sort of thing, in the Western world. So yeah, it's obviously no pushover.
Yeah.
From William of Poitou, he says tempest and continuous rain stopped them from crossing over. But it's
entirely plausible.
The Carman says he's had something in the order of 700 ships.
That's a lot of ships.
That's a lot. That's big.
It's a very big fleet.
For the 11th century.
That'd be big for the Romans. Yeah, that's a big fleet.
And we see in the Bayeux Tapestry, it shows them loading up all the horses and all this thing. The Bayeux Tapestry is great. But where he went across from Dives to St Valery and had to stay there for a while, seems like some people lost their nerve because there's some accounts of deserters at that point, saying, is this thing ever going to happen? It's like late September now. It's some of us have got to go back and till the fields and whatever. Yeah. And you said it was going to be all over by the end of summer. It's the end of summer now. What's going on? Another line from William of Poitiers, who I will be quoting a fair bit in this, because he's the best. It's much longer than the Carmen, so he's pretty much the best source, primary source. He says that the ships look like, quote, like a flock of doves. All the men getting into the ships, these thousands, maybe 10,000 men getting into ships, were like a flock of doves seeking their lofts. The throngs of infantry rushed to take their places on the boats. So there's just no doubt that it's a big invasion attempt. It's not half-assed in any way.
No. William's putting everything he has into this.
Yeah. Really rolling the dice. It really is. And so either on the 27th or the 28th of September, around evening time, when the tide is at the right ebb, they launch out. And it's from St Valery to Pevensey, where they actually originally landed, which is very near Hastings. You know, it's in that part of the world, absolutely. I'll put a map up. That's about 60-odd miles, because everyone knows from Dover to Calais is the shortest possible distance. So, but still, it's about 60-odd miles. If you're travelling in a ship of those days, it's not more than 2, 3, 4 knots. Yeah, so it takes like 12 hours to do that. It's not... Because when you get a ferry from Dover to Calais nowadays, it's like, 40 minutes?
Yeah, something like that.
Whereas there, it's like 12 hours for them to make this crossing. And it's not unfraught with danger, shall we say.
No, not at all.
Because the weather could turn. The English Channel is famous for the weather turning, and suddenly what was a calm sea is just massive breakers.
Yeah.
So yeah,
well,
but
this is why I suggested William might actually have been like, we'll wait for the weather to,
It's not stupid.
No, not
absolutely.
at all.
It's the right call. It's absolutely the right call. I mean, it's sort of, you just can't if the channel is in a tempest.
Yeah.
You just can't attempt it in
too
those vessels. Of that day. So they go all through the night. William's ship, we know, is called the Mora. We don't really know why, but his ship was called the Mora, and it had it was quite often done even in the Spanish Armada. The lead ship would have a lantern or some sort of light at the back of it for everyone else to follow. And that's what he did. And when the sun comes up the following day, William and his ship find themselves just on their own. They've gone too far ahead. And they're completely on their own, just off the coast, just near Pevensey Bay, which is a great place to land. Because just the way it is, it's a great place to beach ships and things. He's all on his own, basically. And there's a bit of a panic aboard his ship.
Well, unsurprisingly. So where's my fleet?
Yeah. Like, wait.
Where's my giant army?
It's all gone awry immediately. But apparently William's response to that was like, calm down. And he just ordered breakfast on his ship, including spiced wine, we're told. And we're told that he just sat down calmly, quote, as if he were in his hall at home. But then, soon enough, they see sort of 4 ships coming over the horizon or within sight. And then the rest of the invasion force. And we're told, William Poitier says, they look like, quote, a dense forest whose trees bore sails. Great lines, isn't it? All this sort of thing.
Very imaginative.
So when they do land on either the morning of the 28th or the 29th of September. What one little story is that when William disembarks, he immediately fell down.
Doesn't this happen to Julius Caesar?
It's a trope. It's almost a trope.
Absolutely,
pretty much a trope. And so some say, that's a terrible omen. He's got unsure footing. God doesn't really he's not behind this because he just fell over. Anyway.
Yeah, as you say, it's a trope. But the thing is it always seems to happen only to the successful men.
Right. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
Like never that trope applied to the unsuccessful men.
Well,
Harold Hardrada didn't fall on the beach, did he?
Right. Yeah. Right.
It's just interesting.
Yeah. You're quite right.
Yeah.
If this little anecdote is true, apparently he laughed it off by saying, like, I've already grasped with my hands the land of England.
I'm reasonably sure that's exactly what Julius Caesar's claimed to have said as well.
Yeah.
It's obvious BS made up after the fact. I don't know why they thought that was a cool story. It's just not true. I'm sorry.
Well, one thing just to say about that sort of thing now is that historians always copy each other. Always.
Yes. Yeah.
When you read the history of Churchill, he's copied Oman loads. In fact, he just copies lines from Tacitus here and there, almost verbatim. And that's in the modern age.
Right.
In the medieval times or before, sometimes they would copy whole pages from Tacitus or Suetonius.
Yeah.
They would just take a character description from Suetonius and say, this is what Charlemagne is like or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, seems to be word for word, the Latin word for word of what Suetonius said, but okay. And one example of that is that they said William the Conqueror was quite abstemious with his drink. And there is directly a line from Suetonius talking about Augustus. Just an example.
I was going to say, I'm not adverse to them, like, quoting, here's Suetonius' description of Caesar or whatever, because it's like, the closest description in time or whatever you have to that person, and so you want to, you've got nothing to innovate there, right? It's like, I don't know, I have no idea, this is just what he's, I'm not adverse to that, but copying like line for line and then just applying that line to someone, that you're writing about, that's very lazy.
Yeah.
Very lazy.
Yeah, cutting pasting the name of the guy you're talking about in place of Augustus.
Yeah.
Well, one thing could be that, say, William the Conqueror was actually abstemious with his
he might
wine.
well have been,
and so you're like, well, here's a great famous passage that everyone knows and loves. It might not be like really underhanded. It's more sort of just the convention. It's just sort of what was done. To us, it looks lazy. But maybe it's not exactly that. I don't know.
You'd say, as Suetonius said of Augustus, William was, you know, and you would not be criticised in any way for saying that. You know, it would be fine.
Well, sometimes they take biblical lines from things. And again, not everyone, but lots of people sort of know. So, oh, that's the tip of the cap to something from the Old Testament or whatever. Okay, so William and his army land at Pevensey. Apparently there was an old Iron Age fort there that he immediately sort of does up and, makes better, makes usable.
Occupies.
And that's what he does with a couple of other places. So they go along to Hastings, because again, I say the battle's on the 14th of October, so there's still a good couple of weeks here, isn't he? He goes along to Hastings, and again, there's an old fort there, sort of from time immemorial, which he does up, and like the tapestry shows them building a motte, a fake hill that you can defend and make palisades and ramparts around and build a castle, actually. Probably of wood in the first instance, but later in stone. So they do that a couple of times.
If there's one thing that an army's useful for, it's building things. This is just one of those things that's throughout all of history. It's like, I've got 10,000 men and none of them are doing anything, but they all have to do exactly as I say. Go and chop down some trees, you know. Like we did the one of the first epochs talking about how the Roman camp was built by the soldiers. It took an hour in the evening. Now, I'm sure that William took a lot more than an hour, but 10,000 men is a good labour force. You know?
It's good to keep them busy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because these are a lot of them, especially mercenaries, adventurers, should we say?
These are not the reliable, trustworthy, noble types.
Yeah, they're not like 19th century infantry divisions that you order to do something and they kind of exactly do it. It's not like that at all. These men will sort of do as they please and do bad things. Well, the tapestry shows us all the horses coming off off the ships and stuff. But so it seems that the Normans do immediately start sort of pillaging and ravaging and burning everything.
What a shock.
A sort of a famous-ish bit in one of the more famous segments of the Bayeux Tapestry, where it shows Normans burning down houses and women and children fleeing for their lives and things. Because it seems that what William did, his logistics, were that when they were still in France mustering, he would provide all the fodder and everything needed. But once they've bounced across the channel, it's every man for himself. It's foraging.
Yeah, well, they have to.
And so at what point does foraging become ravaging,
Well, I mean... Depends who's writing the story, doesn't it?
Exactly.
For the English, they were ravaging the countryside, but for the Normans, they were foraging the countryside. But yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me at all, though. And I don't, it would have happened either way for anyone. If we were invading them, we would have done the same. So it's just,
quite possibly.
Normal course of events.
Yeah, that's right. It's pretty much part of the course.
Yeah.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.